Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. Just a quick point. This meeting, the Zoom conference, is for students only. The Zoom room accommodates about 1,000 people, so we can't accommodate students and parents in this. So there is also a live stream, which I'm putting up in the chat, which is happening on the BG YouTube channel. That's meant for anybody who'd like to join us, for parents or others. So thank you. We'll be starting in just a couple minutes. All right, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this unusual meeting at an unusual time as we start to look into the new school year and what that's going to look like at Bishop Garten. So it's good to see lots of faces on the screen. If you don't mind turning your camera on, that would be great. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Cody, our Dean of Student Formation, Mrs. Poznansky, our Director of School Counseling and Admission, and Mr. Gorell, our Vice Principal. and we're going to walk through some considerations about the start of the school year. A couple quick points before we start the meeting. First off, the meeting is being recorded and it's also being live streamed. So this is going to be up on the Bishop Girton YouTube channel. We've got people still joining now as we speak, and it is a Sunday night, so lots of people probably have plans. And so it will be up available there. If you miss anything, or if any of your friends missed the email or missed the meeting, they can certainly catch it there later. Any parents who are joining us, that is your link on YouTube to view this video. We don't have the capacity to hold the whole student body and all the parents. That's about 2,000 people. So if you're a parent on this, I would encourage you to use the YouTube link. So with that, let's get started with our meeting tonight. The goals we have tonight and for this week. So as I mentioned, a Sunday night meeting on the last day of summer is something unusual to do. These are very unusual times that we're in. But what we found and what we're starting to pick up on is there's a lot of emotion, and some of it's good and some of it's a challenge. There's anxiousness and anxiety about what the school year is going to look like, about what the changes are going to be, about what it's going to mean within the school community, what it's going to mean for you. And there's also a lot of exuberance about returning. Those of you who've had a chance to be back at school know that it's an interesting feeling to be back in the building. It's been almost 6 months since you've last been in school. So there's a big change that represents, and that can be a good feeling and an exciting feeling. So there's a lot of emotion, and we think tonight, a step removed from it, is a good night to go over what to expect. One of the things about COVID is we really don't know where and when COVID is going to challenge us as a school community. It will challenge us at some point this year, but we might only have one shot to get our processes and our procedures right. And so if tomorrow is the day that COVID visits Bishop Girton, we need to make sure that everything is in place and ready, and that everybody knows how we're going to operate over the course of the year in order to be successful. So the goal tonight is to help you visualize what your day is going to look like, to help you have a sense of what is school in the 2020-2021 school year going to be like. And then moving on, this week is about orienting you to those changes before we have a big crowd in the school. So for example, if we have a one-way hallway, if there's 800 people in the building and it's a one-way hallway and you're going the wrong way, that's a bigger issue and it's hard to figure out where you're supposed to be. If on the other hand, there's only a quarter of that and you can see the arrows and you can see what you're supposed to be doing, then maybe you have a better chance at getting oriented. The other thing we know is that you all want to see your classmates. We thought about doing this week with the cohorts, but we decided that it was equally important for you to see the whole class and your whole class. So each class has a day this week to be back. The goal and the thing I hope is that over the course of this week, we gain a lot of confidence in each other and in our ability to follow these plans, and that we can walk out the door on Friday with a full confidence that Bishop Girton's ready to go all in quickly and in the subsequent week. So that's where we're hoping to be at the end of this coming week. We have, and we'll be posting at the end on the COVID page, a student checklist, which basically distills everything we're going to talk about down onto a front and back of a piece of paper. We will be preparing a copy of this for you, and this will be distributed to you on your first day in the building, in the homeroom advisory. And so you'll have this available. So anything you see on a slide, for the most part, is going to be available on a checklist like this one. And this is just a good way to something to keep in front of you and remember while you form some habits what the year is going to look like. Just to kick us off, a scientist who I've really followed a lot, his name is Michael Osterholm, has a comment that he makes, which is that we have to think about this school year we're all starting as being our COVID year, that we think a year 2020 as being the COVID year, which means everything we're used to and everything we've come to expect is going to be a little bit different. And we're going to have some things that might be disappointments. We're going to have some things that might be changes and challenges and mishaps and problems. And there are going to be lots of things happening. And so everything we do, everything we say tonight is subject to change. We could get in the building and realize that part of the plan doesn't work, and we'll make that change, just like we have throughout all of this. So we need to go in with that in mind. We need to go in with the fact that nobody's quite operating at their best right now, that everybody's a little bit anxious. Everybody's kind of concerned about what this year is going to bring and what this is going to look like. And if we all acknowledge that up front, that's normal. And what that anxiety looks like is different for different people. Some people are really nervous about being in the building and being around people, and you're afraid of getting sick or people around you getting sick. Some of you are anxious about, well, what happens if we're not in the building? You've come to depend on the social contact of school, and you're really looking forward to being back in a face-to-face environment. And that's really important too. So there's lots of reasons to be a little bit anxious. There will be some disappointments and changes, but the challenge is to find the opportunity behind every one of them. This spring, I think it was clear as a community, we came up with some neat things, traditions, and when you look at our graduation, when you look at how we handled award ceremonies and classes and things like that, there are tools we will walk away with as a better school when COVID's over, and better able to teach, and some fun traditions. And I think in everything, we have to find those opportunities behind a disappointment. But above all, I think it's most important in a weird time like this, that we all be patient with each other, that we be tolerant to each other, we be kind, and we focus on the other person. COVID really challenges us because it's always about the other person. It's not about us. It's everything we do is about keeping somebody else safe. And so that's an important message. So just to get us off started in that framing, it's going to be an interesting year, and we're going to be patient, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to come out stronger. So some safety things as we start. As of yesterday, there are about 1.83 new cases per 100,000 people per day from the hometowns of the students enrolled at Bishop Garden. So if you average it all out, 1.83 new cases per 100,000 people per day. Okay. And if you consider everybody in our area that has COVID, as a school, we as a school would expect that our student body would have about a fifth of an active case out of 800 people. So what does this mean? Well, you're looking and you're watching the news about parts of the country where they're opening schools. And a lot of those places are opening schools with 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, even 100 times the rate of infection that we have here in New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts. And so you have this image that you're going to come back to school and you're going to be swimming in this sea of COVID. And that's not the reality. The reality is it's likely that if we have cases, they would be small numbers. They would be here and there. They would not be huge numbers. And we could certainly get unlucky, but that's not what it looks like. But what we need to be prepared of is 1 in 5 is still a pretty substantial number. And so COVID might be at BG on the first day. It might be here after the first week, the first month, but eventually we will have a case, and we have procedures in place to deal with that. And we'll do the things we need to do to stay safe. If that means people quarantine and isolate, they will. If that means we take some time and we go remote, we will. So eventually we will have a case. And I want you to think about this in terms of a new way to think about it, which is, what if that case is you? So what if you're the one case in the school at a given point in time? The first thing we know about COVID is that if you get sick, you probably will be okay. That statistically speaking, there are always exceptions, but statistically speaking, this is not a disease that really has been harsh to young people. However, you can transmit COVID, and the people you infect might not be. And so we all have the people who are loved ones, the grandparents, the family members, even people within our school community who are immunosuppressed. We have teachers who are vulnerable and are taking some risk to be back in school with you. Those people may not be okay if they're infected. So we need to keep whatever happens at one case. And if that one case is you, then it's important to make COVID stop with you. And that's sort of a motto for the year, is if you're that one case, if you're that one person, you want to make COVID stop with you. And so what does this look like? Well, we've got layers of protection. And there was an epidemiologist back in the 90s who came up with a model called the Swiss cheese model. And if you're trying to block something, Swiss cheese doesn't make sense as a good way to block something. But if you think about Swiss cheese and lining it up so the holes don't align with each other, that each piece is unique and each piece is different, then what you hope is that the gaps in one piece actually fill in and cover for the gaps in another piece. And all of a sudden, if you stack Swiss cheese on top of itself, you end up with a pretty good protection from whatever the case may be. So if you think about some of the things we'll do, and we'll talk about these in a second, masks. Are masks completely foolproof? No. Masks can't prevent all the spread of the respiratory droplets that spread COVID, but they'll reduce them. But then if you maintain distance, that improves the safety. If we clean and disinfect the school, we have these high-test air purifiers in the school this year. If we use those systems, if we bring in air from the outside, which we're doing this year, all of those things help. If you wash your hands, if you avoid touching your mouth and face as much as possible, those are all things you can do. So you stack layers of protection on top of each other, and that way, even if there's a hole in one layer, we hope that the other layers will support the safety of everybody in our community. So if COVID stops with a cardinal, here are some of the layers. Here are the pieces of Swiss cheese. The first one is the mask requirement. This one doesn't have a lot of holes. This is a really big thing that we can do to keep our community safe. Our mask requirement at Bishop Garden is that every student will bring and wear a cloth face mask, a surgical face mask, or a KN95, one of those types of face mask that is of a solid color or pattern. We have either sent or will be distributing to you a Bishop Garden face mask. This is a great example. It's actually a pretty comfy face mask. It is a face mask that represents the type of cloth face mask we're talking about. We don't want the gator style face masks that fit around your neck and throat. We don't want bandanas. We really want something that's going to fit over your mouth and your nose. And that is the proper way to wear one, is to cover your nose and your mouth with the face mask. The face mask does not help if it's down around your chin. It does not help if it's in your pocket. The expectation is that, especially when you're indoors, at all times, you will be wearing the face mask properly, and you will form that habit. And I will tell you that it took some time this summer to get used to that. I would have these times where I walk up the stairs and you realize you're really out of breath and you can't talk and you can't quite get enough air through the face mask. Those are things you have to get used to, and you do get used to them pretty quickly. If you find the cloth face mask is a lot, the surgical masks, the blue and white masks that you see, can actually be fairly comfortable and easy to use as well. So indoors at all times, and the only exception we're making is on poor weather days, we're going to have to eat indoors. And when it gets cold, we're going to have to eat indoors. And eating periods are going to actually be silent periods because we don't want the droplets getting spewed all over the place. So when you're indoors, masks should be on at all times. When you are outdoors, we are allowing you to take off your masks, and there are some breaks in the day. However, these breaks require you to be distanced 6 feet from other people. So if you're waiting outside in a clump of people, you should be wearing your mask. But if you go out to eat dinner or eat lunch, and you space out, and so everybody's 3 to 6 feet away, or 6 feet away in this case, and you want to take your masks off, you can do that. We are encouraging classes to go outside, and they'll say sit at a distance, and you can take off your mask. So the mask requirement is huge. This is, in my opinion, the number one thing we can do to ensure the safety of everybody in our community. The next piece is distancing, maintaining distancing, and we'll talk about some processes in the building to do that. But this is a big piece of Swiss cheese. Not every classroom lets us get 6 feet apart. The hallways may not let us get 6 feet apart at all times. So we're going to do the best we can with this, but you're wearing the mask to offset that situation. You want to avoid large crowds or indoor gatherings of people. That is something you'll see from us. We won't be having a lot of assemblies this year, at least at the beginning of the year. And if we do, we'll be moving them outside. Hand washing and sanitation, anytime you can. There's hand sanitizer in every room. The restrooms are going to be available to you. So anytime you can conduct that hand washing and sanitization, that is great. Outdoors is better than indoors. When you're waiting around before school, we're waiting on tents. They should be here in the next couple of days. There was a little bit of a hitch in getting them here, but you can have an intense experience and wait outside and have some air rather than using the locker rooms. And lastly, if you have symptoms, report them immediately. If something doesn't feel right, the list of COVID symptoms is huge. So basically it comes down to if something doesn't feel right, Speak to the nurse if you're here. Speak to a teacher or an administrator if you're here. If you're home, if in doubt, stay home. We have the technology in place for you to attend class from home. There is no risk in doing so. Right? You don't lose anything by doing that. So stay home in that case. So on the night before school, and we're going to kind of do a day in the life here, and that's going to be our sequence. The night before school, you want to make sure you know if we're doing cohorts, if we're in orange, are you in person or are you remote? That very first week, we're going by class. So each class has been assigned a day, but make sure you verify that. Okay, make sure that you and your parents have updated your MyBG contact information, because that's how we'll get to you if we need to make a change at the last minute. If we get a call overnight that we had a couple cases of COVID and we need to shift to a different model, for example, we might make a phone call and we would say, we had a change in plans and tomorrow we're going to be in an orange model and these cohorts are going to be attending. So that could change quickly, and just to be prepared for that. Make sure that your electronic devices are charged. Make sure that they're in good working order. I know, and you know, that every single one of you has a working webcam. Nobody believes that anymore. If you say that your webcam isn't working, that's the expectation, is that if you're in a class virtually, that webcam will be working, that we'll able to see and hear you. So that's going to be our kind of expectation starting off. And last but not least, lunch orders. Lunch orders should be submitted by the Thursday of the prior week. So online, and there's an instruction on the COVID page for doing this. Online, you should be able to go and pick the lunches that you'd like to receive for the week. Submit those by Thursday with the right payment arrangements, and that will be deducted from your account, and those lunches will be delivered to you during the lunch period. So you need to be thinking of that each week. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Mr. Gurrell.
Hello, everybody. Welcome this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit right now about some expectations for learning if you're learning remotely. As you know, at Bishop Guertin, we have a dress code for students when they're in attendance. Part of that dress code is building that soft skill of learning and practicing how to act like a professional in a professional setting, that we maintain a certain amount of respect for the classroom, for the teacher, and that there is a professional and academic decorum to that classroom. And so that's going to be extended as well if you're learning remotely. And so our dress code is still going to be in effect. Students are expected to be in a BG polo or Oxford while learning remotely. Students are also expected to have the camera on. A teacher wants to know that you're present. You should respect the teacher's planning. You should respect the teacher's effort. You should respect that teacher's desire to teach you by being fully on screen at all times. The camera should be on you at all times. The camera should show your whole face at all times. And the setting should be appropriate to school. I know this spring when things started, some folks got comfortable going to school or attending class from the comfiness of a comforter pulled up to their chins and in the back of a darkened bedroom. That's not going to happen this year. This year, all students are expected to be on camera, in dress code, and in a setting appropriate to school. And Mrs. Poznansky will talk about some of these things a little later, but the more that you can make school and more you can make your remote experience feel like school, the better you will perform and the better you will feel about that experience. So get up in the morning, get dressed, go through your normal routine. If you're attending remotely, be in dress code, be on screen, be sitting up at a desk, be sitting in a place that puts you in a mindset to be ready to work and to be ready to engage in academics. This is all about building habits of mind in this case. And the next thing you're going to want to make sure you do is connecting to Zoom. This year, our connection to Zoom works a little bit differently. Last year, you attended a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet by clicking on a link that was specific to a teacher. This year it works a little bit differently. The system that we have places a camera and a mini CPU and a widescreen television in every classroom. This way, a teacher can see students who are attending remotely, and should a situation arise that a teacher has to teach from home, that screen can be turned around and the teacher can see the classroom in front of them. Now, in order to access that system, you're going to have to know where to find those links. And so what Mr. Fitzgibbons has done is that on the resource tab on your MyBG page, so if you log into your MyBG page, I think it's the third tab over, the resource tab. If you click on that, you will see a bunch of resources pop up, and in the upper left-hand corner, there'll be a box for Zoom classrooms. If you click on that box will open up and you'll end up with a list of links to all of your classrooms. So what you're going to need to do when you get your schedules is you're going to have to make note of which classrooms your classes are in. So as part of your routine of prepping for your year, when you get your agenda planner, or if you keep your agenda on your phone, you're going to want to make sure you know period 1, American history, room 214. You're going to want to make sure that you have all that information available for yourself. So should you unexpectedly have to learn from home, you're going to be in a position to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grell. Next up is Mr. Cody, who's going to cover a couple of points on this slide.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Mr. Grell just mentioned dress code for those learning remote. The dress code is similar if attending in person. After this first week, we're going to be in the BG polos for moving forward. It isn't a requirement, but it's the recommendation the weather's going to be a little bit warm for the next maybe 2 months, and to have to wear a mask and that sort of thing. We're recommending the BG polo. This first week, however, we are going to be in Oxfords with ties for the photos. I would say once we're done with photos, we could probably remove the tie, but please make sure this week you're in an Oxford with a tie for the photo. We're going to ask that families do a self-screening with their students on a daily basis, and you can see the acronym there. It's going to it's going to be an online survey submitted by your parent on MyBG. There's going to be a temperature check, and pay attention to the number. If it's 100.4 degrees or higher, that's going to be a stay-at-home red flag right there. The questions will also ask if there have been any exposures to people with suspected COVID cases, symptoms. Mr. Cerncy referred to there being a number of symptoms. When in doubt, stay home, attend school remotely. Okay, if you've got anything that resembles anything you might be familiar with a COVID symptom, it's okay to stay home and be more cautious than you need to be. No travel outside New England in the past 14 days. Again, it's another one of those things where if you have traveled outside of New England in the past 2 weeks, we're going to ask you to stay home and quarantine for a little bit, attending remotely. Mr. Cerncy drove the point home of bringing your mask to school. Please bring your mask to school. Please make sure you're wearing it just about all the time, with the exception of those few outside opportunities. And bring a water bottle. We're not going to, we're discouraging drinking from the water fountains, but you can certainly fill your bottle at some of the bottle fill stations. And then we're asking you to recommit to the COVID expectations every day. None of the changes we made are daunting, but they require some effort, they require some thinking, and we're asking you to recommit every single day to be part of the cause here so that we can stay open. The last thing we want to do after working all summer to figure out how to do this right is to have to close down because we got a little bit slack on some of these. So please, if you can't commit to the effort every single day, talk to somebody. We'll help you figure it out. There are things that are going to require some stamina. Wearing a mask every day, there are things that you'll get used to, and I can kind of vouch for what Mr. Cerncy said about, the mask, and after a while, it's a pain, but you get used to it, and it's that first layer of defense that is one of the most effective. So please recommit every day.
Mr. Cody, can I just ask a question that came up? I didn't clarify too much about the mask expectations and what is and is not allowed. And so the question is, well, what do we mean by colors, patterns? What are the types of things we do not want to see in masks?
Well, at BG, we have a dress code in a uniform for a reason, and it's to sort of avoid some of the distraction that comes with not having that in place. So I guess the biggest point is that you're not wearing something distracting. You're not wearing something that's going to cause unnecessary or undue confrontational conversation with having slogans, logos that are off, that type of thing. So we're looking for something solid in color, looking for a fabric mask. Mr. Cerncy said no gaiters. The science is a bit wishy-washy on it, but it's bending toward them actually being worse than not wearing a mask at all. So something plain colored, something non-distracting. We are sending everybody a pretty slick BG mask with our logo on it. And, we went with a version of that mask that we know to be effective. It's got the right fabric and the right densities and made in with the right process and that type of thing that we know it to be effective. I'm a fan of the plain sort of white and blue surgical mask. I find that one to be the most comfortable. So be reasonable in what you're selecting to wear. Again, avoid words, avoid logos, avoid crazy patterns and those types of things.
Mhm. All right. So moving along a little, we're going to continue on with arrival considerations.
All right. So arrival, if you're driving and you've secured a parking pass, don't worry about the pass on the first day. Those are going to be distributed in advisory. Typically, what we do is we assign parking spots. The number of the tag you have is your spot. For the time being, we are not doing that. There's a chance that at various points in the year we could be at partial capacity, and it doesn't make sense to have you park 2 miles away because you were late getting a pass when we've got spots kind of up front that are open. So for the time being, we're not worrying about space numbers. You will need a pass to park on property, but don't worry about the numbers. It's sort of first come, first serve. As you park and exit your cars, please make sure you're distancing and wearing your mask as you're making your way into the building. Again, the two strongest lines of defense in keeping things at bay here with the COVID. If you're being driven, drop off is going to be in the loop, and we're using the entrances down at the end of the loop. The entrance to the field house on the left of the gymnasium, and then the hallway entrance to the right of the gymnasium are the two entrances we're going to use at the end of the loop. You will not be using the main entrance. So please have whoever's driving you move all the way to the end of the loop, drop off, hit the left lane, and they can leave. Okay. Now you can get out of your car at any point in the loop. And I would suggest that if you're being driven, you get out when you hit a traffic stoppage, and then whoever's driving you can get out to the left lane and make the exit and move everything along a little bit quicker. But that's where we're going to enter in the loop. Okay. Those who are parking, we're entering again through the locker rooms, senior locker rooms like normal. Before school, there will be students who need to be there early. And if you're there early, it's okay to stay in the CAF, the library, the locker rooms, the KLC classrooms. There are a bunch of desks in the field house. We've created a bit of a space there. So there's desks that are spaced out. If you end up in the cafeteria, you'll notice that on the cafeteria tables, we've marked with some red tape spaces where you can't be. We've gone to one side of the table. That way students aren't facing each other when they're sitting at the cafeteria tables. On the side that you can sit on, you'll notice some X's. Those are there to keep you spaced evenly and spaced out so that we're doing everything we can here to fight the COVID, the mask and the distancing. So it's okay to be in those places. The strong suggestion here is to visit your locker before 7:35. Typically, what the locker room looks like is everyone's at their locker 30 seconds or so before the bell rings. That creates a bit of a crowd. You will notice that there will be teachers and administrators on duty in the locker rooms pretty frequently this year. and they're going to be asking you to break up the crowds and space out and that type of thing. So please do your part. Try to get there before the absolute last second. Grab your materials and move on. Like Mr. Cernusy said, outside is better. We've got some tents coming. There's congregating areas out there. If you're going to congregate, outside's the place to do it. Okay. COVID has a much more difficult time hanging in outside air than it does in an inside space with limited air movement. So please make sure you're getting there, getting your stuff and moving on. Avoid congregating in those spaces. Proceed to advisory after 7:30 or wait outside. Keep your distance.
And please, we would ask, be helpful about cooperating with teachers. Teachers are going to be looking for areas of congregation. And if they come up, it really is a safety issue. If they come up and say, you got to break it up and move along. Sometimes as a teacher, you walk up to a group and everybody looks at each other and nobody moves. And if a teacher comes up and says, this is a group that really needs to break up, like everybody should be taking steps back and moving away from each other and trying to find a different place. We're really relying on them and they're taking that on to help us stay safe.
Hallway travel and lockers. Follow one-way hallways, arrows, markings applied during transitions. I'm going to get back to that one in just a minute because we've got a graphic on the next slide that's going to be kind of helpful. The next point on the slide, restrooms. Avoid congregating in the restrooms, please. Maintain distancing, use your mask. You're going to want to go in the bathroom and rip your mask off, right? The minute you do that, you've compromised everything you've managed to do all day long by keeping it on. So please keep it on. Please avoid meeting up with friends in the bathrooms, hanging out in there, doing whatever it is you do on the phone and kind of fooling around. That's, we've been talking about that a lot the last couple of years and things are moving in the right direction. This year's the year it really has to be tight. We can't have parties in the bathrooms, please. Lockers. Lockers are only going to be accessible before school at the morning break, which is after the first 2 periods, lunchtime and after school. You will not be able to go to your lockers during class. You'll definitely not be able to go to your lockers in transitions. With the one-way traffic and the need to keep students spaced out, there's not going to be an opportunity during transitions to grab your supplies. So please take a look at your schedule. You've got 2 to worry about, day 1 and then a day 5, 4, day 4. Day 3.
Well, green and gold. Yeah.
We have the green and the gold.
And that is in my BG
Okay.
at this point. So you'll be able to see those classes.
So plan accordingly, okay? Plan accordingly. Before school, know what 4 classes you have coming up and what you're gonna need. I would caution you on the break visit. The break is 15 minutes, okay? And if I know BG students like I think I do, everyone is going to want to go to their locker in that 15 minutes. There will be adults there spacing you out, telling you to break it up. You may have to wait. You may have to wait, and you may be cutting it close if you use that break visit as something that you need. Okay, my advice, see what the routine looks like after a couple of weeks, and if it seems like it's something you're going to be able to manage, then great. Otherwise, my advice, plan for the first 4 periods and then plan for the second 4 periods, okay? The last point says bring all books and materials to class, bring lunch to 4th class. This is where I would advise, the one group I might advise to go to their locker at the break are the students who bring their lunch to school. That way you're not carrying it around for the first quarter of the day. You can grab it at that morning break, okay? Revisiting the one-way hallways, if we could go to the map. The map essentially explains the hallways that are one-way, the hallways that are two-way, and the direction of the stairwells. The stairwells have all been sort of designated as one-way, moving either up or down. Essentially what we're looking at is the 2 major stairwells on the ends of the building. Those are up-only stairwells, okay? The central stairwell, all the way down to the senior locker room, is a down stairwell, all right? The other thing you'll notice is that on the first floor, the mid-level of the building, the hallways flow out towards the ends of the building. On the top floor, you'll notice that those hallways flow towards the central staircase. Okay. Some other little tricky spots that we've identified and been able to capitalize a little bit on are things like the Shalom Wing staircases, which haven't typically been used by students. Okay. There are stairwells at the ends of the Shalom Wing. There's one that's right outside the lower art room that is an up-only staircase. So students in the lower art room will use that staircase to go up if they need to go up to their next class. Okay. There's one at the just outside the Mac lab. All computer science students who are attending class in any of the computer labs will use that stairwell to go up. Okay. You'll notice that the one staircase sort of in the middle by room 11, you'll see a black box there. There it is. Okay. That stairwell is there, but the black box is there because it can't be accessed from the basement floor. You can only access it from the middle floor to go down. Okay, that's a down only stairwell. If you look over at the first floor map, you can see that in that same spot is as a small graphic that indicates that it's a down stairwell. Okay, another stairwell that we're looking at is the one that goes in the science block. Okay, and that's accessible from the top floor and it's down only. So you can see that there's a little black box over on the first floor indicating you can't access that from that first floor. Okay, so my advice, like Mr. Cernusy said, this will be posted. Take a look at the map, try to plan out your routes. Know that we're trying to minimize trouble spots. Although we can't avoid them entirely, there are a couple of two-way hallways. There's the hallway right outside the chapel. You'll notice that that hallway, as well as the hallway in the Shalom Wing on the middle floor, is two-way traffic. Okay, with the use of the end stairwells, it's going to help traffic flow a little bit, so it'll minimize the two-way traffic that needs to go there, but it's there nonetheless, as are the short hallways that go to the extended blocks of classrooms over off the odd wings on the first and second floor. Okay. So the school has markings. There are arrows everywhere. There are do not signs everywhere to kind of help things. We've asked the teachers to be of assistance here, especially in that first week, getting students acclimated to the flow of the classrooms, and to take a soft poll in their class to see, you know, where the bulk of them are going and how best to get there and that type of thing. Okay. All right, so that's sort of traffic flow in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Cody. I'm going to talk a little bit about classrooms and the classroom setup. Once you've gotten to your classroom following the appropriate route, you're going to have to pay attention to your distancing and your spacing as best you can in classrooms as well. All the rules that apply for being in the building apply in classrooms. Mr. Cody and I went through the building. We arranged desks and we spaced desks in a way that would maintain a 3 to 6 foot spacing, all facing the same way. We removed desks from overcrowded classrooms. So those steps were taken in order to create a safer learning environment. So when you get to your classroom, you have to keep that in mind. So once you get to class and you pick your seat or you're assigned your seat, you got to stay in that seat and you cannot move the desk. You can't rearrange them to work with a classmate. You have to keep the desk in that space. In fact, all teachers are asked to keep a seating chart this year for it, just in case we find ourselves in a situation where we have to engage in contact tracing. It's important that once your desk and once your seat is assigned, or it's the one you've chosen, that's your seat and you have to stay in that seat. And of course, you're going to have to keep your mask on at all times. A teacher cannot waive mask use. If we're in the building, everybody has to wear a mask in the building. There's no two ways about that. That, as Mr. Cernusy said, that's the step that we're all going to take. And that's the thing that we're all going to have to learn how to do that's going to keep us in the building for as long as possible. So it's very important that you maintain your classroom spacing. I'd like to take a quick second also to talk about our classroom rotation. Until further notice, this is going to be our daily schedule. We'll have a green day and a gold day with a couple breaks in between. And what you'll notice is if you take a look at the beginning of the day, so period 1, period 2, period 3, and period 4, those are all 1 hour long classes. The second half of the day on a green day, 5, 6, 7, 8, those are half-hour classes. And then on a gold day, we would swap it. So you'd have 5, 6, 7, 8 would be your long courses. 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be your short courses. Now it's going to take some time to get used to finding the right traffic flow, finding the right traffic pattern, and get to your classes. We've made some plans. We've timed it out. Students should be able to make it between classes in the amount of time given. Class times are still class times. You're expected to be in class on time. And that includes if you're a remote student. If you're attending remotely, it is expected that you will have logged in to that teacher's classroom and be on that classroom screen when class starts. If you're not, and it becomes a problem, you'll have a conversation with me, you'll have a conversation with Mr. Cody. If there's a situation where you don't show up to class or you don't show up on screen and you're out of the school day and you're unaccounted for, Mrs. Cato will likely be calling home. One of the other things that will happen as a result of this schedule is that because we're seeing all classes every day, teachers will have a pattern that they're going to use for assigning homework. Typically, it's going to mean homework assigned, possibility of homework assigned every other night. Different departments are going to have different guidelines for that, but that will be the expectation. So we understand that we don't have that typical break from the rotating drop schedule that we've had in the past, but teachers will be considerate of the amount of time you have in your day to get your schoolwork done.
All right, you're going to talk just a little bit about lunch and reemphasize a couple of things Mr. Sternstein alluded to. In good weather, the encouragement is going to be to eat lunch outdoors, in classrooms and in open spaces. If we're eating in classrooms due to poor weather, like Mr. Sternstein said, we really need to minimize the socializing. Realistically, it shouldn't take more than 10, 15 minutes to actually eat the lunch that you have. At that point, if everyone's back in a mask, then the rest of the time can be pretty casual and social in poor weather when we're kind of confined to classrooms. But best practice is going to be to eat outdoors. Part of the concern with the weather and being confined to a classroom is that once masks are taken off and you're eating and you're talking, a lot of the transport for COVID gets put into a sort of a stale room, and the air's not moving as much as it can be if you're outside, and it puts everybody in a little bit of a vulnerable situation. So whenever we can, we're going to really encourage the eating of outside, and again, we'll have tables set up. Maintenance has instruction to kind of put as many banquet tables as they can out there, a couple of chairs at each one, kind of spaced out. There'll be other spaces outside versus, other than just the courtyard. There'll be space over in the new sort of basketball courts that are out there for now. We may open parts of the field. There are more tables now in the courtyard and that type of thing. So do your best to eat outside whenever you can.
One comment on food choice, as you choose what you're going to bring for lunch. Try to think in terms of things that are easily portable, things that would work out well in a classroom. It may not be the year to bring lots of spaghetti and stuff that going to get all over the place. You may want to try to bring things that you can carry. Sandwiches are great because then on nice days you would have the ability to simply walk out the door and go eat that outside, and it's not too much of a mess. The other thing to be aware of is allergens. If you can avoid things that have nuts in them, if you can avoid things like that, because somebody's going to be sitting at that desk during the period after. So be aware of that.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the end of day. The end of day typically looked like a bell where everyone was released, and then there was just this huge crowd that all moved downstairs into the locker rooms. We recognize that as being a challenge and something we probably can't be doing. So what we're going to try to do is even out and balance the dismissals a little bit. So at the end of the day, there will be one long bell that sort of indicates that that's the finish of the day. And the Nashua bus riders and the seniors will be dismissed at that first long bell. Okay, the next bell, which comes 2 minutes later, is a regular bell that releases the sophomores. So what that does is it minimizes the crowds in the 2 locker rooms. Okay, so the senior locker room will likely have some seniors in it grabbing their stuff and moving on. Second bell rings, sophomores get down there. It affords the seniors a couple more minutes before the juniors come in next. So the next regular bell, juniors are dismissed, and then the freshmen are dismissed on that last regular bell. Okay, we're really doing this to sort of ease the congestion in those locker rooms so that we don't have any problems. And again, there'll be teachers down there insisting that you break up crowds, that you space a little bit, and that type of thing. You know, in the past, one of the great things about the locker rooms was that it was a social point in the day, and you could gather in there at lunch and you could hang around there at the end of the school day. Unfortunately, because of what we're trying to manage, we can't let you linger around in there. We can't let you congregate and have social time in there. If you've driven yourself to school, we're going to ask that you get your stuff and you go, you know, and leave as quickly and as organized as possible. If your rides are here, please get to your rides and move off campus. We really need to thin down the crowds and that sort of thing. If you are in the situation where you are staying late, okay, your ride isn't coming till later, or you know, if you've got an activity that doesn't start right after school, maybe starts a short while after school, there you can stay in spaces. We're not going to put everybody out into the cold if they're waiting for something. So you can be in the cafeteria. Again, just be mindful of the table markings. You can be up in the library. We've reduced the amount of furniture in there, and we've tried to space some things out to give a bunch of small sort of individual spaces. You can be in the locker rooms. You'll notice that we've taken the picnic tables out. You can be in there. Just make sure you're spaced out. The KLC is another option. Classrooms, there'll be far fewer students in the classrooms after school than during school. And again, the field house has desks in it. Always, always, always try to distance, okay? And again, if you don't have to be around after school, it's sort of countercultural to everything we've been building for years, but we're going to ask you to kind of get your stuff and go so that we can keep managing the COVID in our area and keep the school open as much and as widely as possible.
Hi, everyone. This is Mrs. Posnanski. Nice to see your faces, and we are really looking forward to having you back in the building in another day or two. So we know that this is really scary. Oh, first of all, I want to say that we have a lot of new Cardinals joining us this year, more than we've had in previous years. So we are really looking to you to be the kind of Cardinals we know and love, and really welcome these students to the school. Be kind. Everybody's trying to figure out these new ways to get to class, the new schedule. A lot of things are different. So be kind to our new Cardinals. Reach out to them, welcome them into our school community, welcome them in your classes, especially if we do have to go remote, to make sure that they're there, that you're talking to them, that you're really encouraging our newest Cardinal success. So we're very, very excited to have, and some of them are on this Zoom call tonight. I'm recognizing names and faces, and we're very excited to have so many new members to our community. So be aware of that, please. And we know that this is pretty scary. We know that it's confusing, it's different than it's been before, and it's constantly changing. Everything that we say to you tonight could potentially change in a week. So we understand that. And it causes a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, not just students. The adults in our community are feeling it as well. we all realize that this is a very different situation than we've ever been in before, and that at times change and when things are different and when they are kind of scary and you don't know what to expect, it can be very, very confusing and can cause a lot of stress. That's okay. It's all right for you to be stressed. It's all right for the adults to be stressed and anxious. It's okay. We understand. This isn't forever, but it's with us for now. And we can get through this together. And if you don't know the right answer, or you don't know something that's different about the schedule or which way to go in the hallway, we're all here to help. We're all going to help each other out because we're going to be stronger at the end of all of this. And we just have to work together. This is not forever. It's for right now, but it is here and it is real. And so we really need your help, just like you need our help, to make this a year that we can be in school, be with each other, get the support and the education that we all want. There's some things I'm just going to share with you that might be helpful for you if you are feeling overwhelmed. If it's helpful to you to ask others not to talk about COVID or the pandemic, then ask them not to. You can change the narrative. You have a lot of other things to talk about than this. You have a lot of other things to talk about than putting this in a negative spin that we can't do this or we can't do that. Think of all the things you can do, given the fact that others can't. Limit your news time. Turn off the news feeds on your phone. Because the problem with that is you get a little snippet of what the real news story is. And it can be frightening because news feeds try to catch you. It's sort of they say something kind of really outlandish or really strong, and that is to get you to open up the news story. Turn it off if it stresses you out. The news that you're going to need to know for school will be given to you by the school. We will keep you informed as much as possible. And think about the big picture here and how you can be of help. As Mr. Gorell said, we are purposeful in this approach. We want you to be in school. You can feel better if you feel like you're doing something productive. If you're showing up to class every day on time, whether in school or remotely, that you wear your uniform, that you sit up straight, that you're at a desk, that you're not laying on a bed, that you adhere to the rules, that you wear your masks, you keep your distance socially, and encourage others to do that. Step up and be a leader. Avoid large crowds in or out of school, because the more you do that, the longer we can stay open and everybody can be in school. And it's thinking about others will make you feel better. When you're empathic toward others, it helps you feel more secure in where you are. So be a leader, lead by example. Consider what you're grateful for. We're all experiencing the same weather, but we're not all experiencing the same storm. Some people have had little raindrops and that's all. And it's been, COVID has acted as an inconvenience. For other people, it's been a torrential downpour. There has been job loss. There has been change in their lives that are pretty dramatic. And for other people, it's been a hurricane where they've not only had a huge change in their lifestyle through job loss or furloughs, but they may have lost a loved one. So we're not all going through this the same way, even though we're all having the same weather. So keep that in mind and be grateful for what you might have. Again, when you think about that and you write down what you're grateful for, it's going to help you get through this. When the wind blows, you can either be a candle and get snuffed out, or you can be like a brush fire and continue to grow. And one of the things that might be helpful to consider is just that. Am I getting buried under this pandemic in this situation, Or am I finding spots where I can grow and change and learn and help others? We know it's scary. We're here to help you, and we will walk you through all of this. And as Mr. Cody said, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, ask. Just ask someone, ask an adult, ask another student. We will get you through this difficult time. We believe in you. We believe in you. And we know you will get through this and at this time, and you will be leaders and be better and stronger in the end. We believe that of all our students, and we believe that of all our teachers and staff members, and we will be here for you. So don't ever hesitate to ask for help. That is the best way to get through this. And if you need support and guidance, please know that your school counselor is available, the administrators are available, your teachers are available to you, and we're here for you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our planned program. And as mentioned, this first week is about building confidence and about building a sense as a community that we can tackle the things in front of us. And as Mrs. Poznansky said, we believe in you and your ability to manage the curveballs that have been thrown at us this year. We're looking forward to making the absolute best of the situation. It will be a complete community effort. And so we need all of your help and all of the decisions you make to be mindful. Think about the Swiss cheese and how you can eliminate holes and add layers at all times and wherever you are. So at this point, I will allow for any questions in the chat window. Please feel free to ask anything that you're curious about. One thing a lot of people have been asking about is schedules. Schedules should be posted on MyBG within the next 24 hours. So by late tomorrow, you will be able to see your teachers in your schedule. And when you notice those rooms, those will be the rooms you'll connect to get into Zoom. Athletic locker rooms is going to be open, not at this point in time. Phys ed classes, we haven't addressed deeply tonight, but they're going to be a different model that does not require you to change before class at this point in time. We're doing that because the locker room spaces are a little congested, and we saw that as a bigger risk than we wanted to take. Students who have decided to participate in remote learning, you can come to picture time. So you can get your picture taken at any of the times. So you can come to school anytime that you can make it in, and you can get your pictures taken Tuesday through Thursday. One question that was asked a number of times is, why are we asking seniors to get pictures taken? We're trying to think ahead. Last year, when we got to award ceremonies and graduation, we didn't have a formal picture of every senior taken. And the only thing we had was their graduation photo and their yearbook photo. And a lot of times those are very casual. So somebody's won an award and they're getting all kinds of recognition and they're going to be in the paper. And the best picture we had of them was them sitting on the beach. And so we want to be able to honor our seniors better than that. And so we're trying to think ahead for that. Next question, will basketball players be able to use the gym after school? Not likely the gym, but the basketball courts that have been built outside, those will remain accessible, at least until we get to tennis season. Those would be available at the end of the school day. Athletes practicing after school, that's something that you will be working out through your coach and the athletic department. So if you're practicing after school, where do you store your clothes and change? You should store your clothes in the main locker, and then the coach will have a protocol. Some teams will use the locker room. Being on a team is a discretionary choice you're making rather than everybody having to take the course. If you do not have a study, do you get your picture done after school? There will be announcements made in terms of when you can get your picture taken if you don't have a study. Do we have an estimate as to how long masks will be required? Probably throughout COVID, that it could take, we could be sitting a year from now and still be dealing with some repercussions of COVID. And so we're in it for the long haul, and you should be prepared to be dealing with masks for a considerable period of time, but definitely for the foreseeable future. Which doors will be open in the morning for student drivers to enter? Mr. Cody, I believe we're opening the locker rooms. Is that correct?
That is correct. The locker room doors will be open.
Okay. Question is, are there sanitation procedures? Yes, every class has cleaning supplies. At the end of classes, we're going to pass around and spray down desks and ask you to help wiping down desks. You should not have 8 periods of homework every day. That is to Mr. Gorell's point that you would more likely experience a differentiation of homework day to day. So some classes will give assignments on one day, some classes will give on the other day, and they should even out pretty well. Are virtual students allowed to be outside during class? We would encourage you to be inside and seated at a desk or a work area. It's going to be kind of challenging for students who are sitting in a classroom to be watching you outside during the class. Can you use polos from last year? Mr. Cody, are there any restrictions on polos at this point?
Yeah, whatever polos you have, those are fine. We're not having kids buy new polos just because we changed up the logo on the shirt a little bit, so that's fine. Polos from last year are okay.
To Rowan's question, you do not need to wear masks for your photos. We will have you take them off just to smile. Will there be spring sports? At this point, we're planning on all of our sports seasons. That's the goal. That's subject to anything that might change day to day. And so spring sports are way far out there. Why is there no talking if we eat inside if the masks are already off to eat? Because the idea is that if you're talking, the droplets are coming out of your mouth and you're projecting them out. If you're eating, you're not projecting them to the same extent. That period of time where you're eating is actually the biggest piece of Swiss cheese right now for us. And one way we can contain that is to prevent to not talk while you eat. So the ideal picture is you come into class, you eat your lunch starts, you eat your lunch fast, and then the last few minutes of the class would be a social period of time. But it's a way to protect everybody in the room. It's probably the riskiest part of the day, honestly. And lunch has been the biggest challenge to us as we've tried to find a way to keep everybody safe. Fall sports, same thing. Decisions are being made every day and week. We're committed to maximizing the experience of our students through fall sports. Why are we having 8 periods a day rather than 6? Right when 6 would allow for less exposure. That's actually a true trade-off that we're accepting. What we're thinking about there is that because students are going to be coming and going, basically the idea is we want to make sure that if we have an orange day and say you're in only 3 out of 5 days, we don't want you going extended lengths of time where you don't get to see your teacher or your particular class. We want you to be able to see every teacher in every class on every day. Can a remote student attend school for the whole day and not just drop in for pictures? You're certainly welcome to, but what we would ask is that remote students make a decision that you're going to be remote or you're going to be in school. It should not be a game day morning decision that you're making. So we need to be able to keep track of that. Football contact is Coach John Trisciani, is the head coach of the football team. If you go to the faculty resource page, again, you're looking for Coach Trisciani for football. If you have sports after school, can you stay after school until they start? Yes, just use the spaces, be outside if it's nice, socially distance and spread out. During an emergency evacuation, do we still follow the one-way paths? No, during an emergency evacuation, you would follow the normal emergency evacuation routes. Similar to at the end of the day, the goal then is to get out of the building using the normal routes as quickly as possible. I'm not sure which logo we changed. Weight room right now is closed, but there is talk, and we are going to make an effort to make that available. Tutoring will always be available, yes, and the honor societies and others that handle that will be taking care of it. If you finish eating and put your mask back on when indoors, yes, you may talk at that point. How are we doing with books? What are we doing with our books if we have to go remote? Hopefully, if we're going to head remote as a school, we'll have some warning that that's coming, much like in the spring, and be able to tell you to have everything at home. Will clubs still meet? Yes, absolutely. Clubs will have to deal with some of the social distancing and restrictions, but clubs are going to meet. Is there going to be a schedule for when every class period can assign homework? Not a specific schedule, but teachers are planning to spread out the homework load so that you would not expect to get an assignment in all 8 classes every night. We're trying to keep the overall workload at the same point it was at. How do you ease into in-person learning for the following weeks? That depends on this week. If we see people complying with masks and doing a good job of following traffic flow and the new process, then we're going to be a lot closer or all in the following week. If we see that we have a lot of challenges and we're having to do lots of reminding and having struggles, then we're going to take a slower path. Next question, if there were contact tracing, how would that go? I would just like, would just the people who were in contact with, or would it have been people they were in contact with along the way? So the state defines a close contact as somebody who's been within 6 feet for 10 minutes. So in cases of classes, that would be usually the people sitting right around you in a classroom. That would not be somebody you passed in the hall. That might be somebody you were on a sports team with, somebody you were in a car with, somebody you were in a group with for a long period of time before and after school. Those would be the types of contacts that they'd be looking for. But in case of any COVID case, we would be responsible for contacting the Department of Health, and they would evaluate the situation and they would take the steps necessary. They'd look at our seating charts, they'd look at what activities and groups that student was in, and they would trace the contacts. Will there be some teachers who are not teaching in class at all? Yes, there are teachers who are going to be remote. They are essential and they're central to our community and our mission. And there are teachers for whom being in the building during this pandemic is too great a risk. And we're going to respect that. And we're going to make it work so that we'll turn the TV around and we'll watch them teach you from home. After this week, all grades would be going to school at the same time. We will either be in cohorts at that point or we would be in yellow and full on in. Is there more time in between classes due to the strict? Yeah, it's a full 5 minutes between class. You're going to have to adjust. There may be some improvements in traffic flow. There may be some bottlenecks that we'll have to work on. But there is a full 5 minutes between class. Seating charts are at the discretion of the teacher. You will have assigned seats, but that will be determined based on the class. If the school becomes orange, a student will have to bring their books back and forth every day. Pretty much, yes. Depending on some classes, you may have books that you don't transition with. Question is, will there be lenience if you're slightly late to class? We want you to do the very best you can to be on time to class. Obviously, the first couple of days, you're going to end up on the wrong way side of a one-way hallway at least once. And that's part of why we're starting slow with a smaller population. So we're going to figure it out. Nobody's going to flip out on you the first day, but we want you to figure out those patterns.
And if I could jump in on that one real quick, if you find that you're having a pattern of not being able to make it, come and see me, or I'll call you to come and see me, and we'll figure it out. Sometimes it's a matter of a simple, small change. So don't overthink it. Just get to class. If you're having a struggle, come and see me.
There's a question about the lockers between classes, and we are strongly discouraging that. We really want you to use before school, the break, the lunch, after school. And that means you're responsible for just two periods of class at a time, and then the four short periods at the end of the day. If we get online books, will every teacher allow us to use laptops? This is going to be a year of flexibility as far as devices are concerned. We have asked teachers to minimize the amount of book traffic and book carrying that goes on. So that should be a possibility. Could you go to your car during the break so you could use your car as a locker? Let's start with a no on that. But that's actually an interesting idea that we hadn't thought about. So that is something we will discuss if there's a way to do that at some point moving forward. There are some adjustments to this that we can consider down the road. Are there any other questions out there? It was kind of rapid fire. All right. Well, we will stay in the meeting. Otherwise, be aware of any emails that come out. Your parents will get a survey on the first day of your attendance. Make sure they take that in MyBG. We're really excited to see you back in person over the coming week.
All right. Good night, y'all. See you next week.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.
Right. Do we bring all of our books the first day? I would not carry everything to class. I would use your sense. Bring a notebook, bring something to write with, and start there, and the teacher will give you instructions. Will the multi-purpose room doors be open in the morning? No.